part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Sabol Brothers on the Baseline Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Sabol.
And I'm the other one, John Sabol. How you guys doing? Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, John, this is going to be a fun one. On the podcast today is legendary Browns kicker Phil Dawson. If you remember the Browns from the beginning of the expansion era, really up until really the last but he retired just
2012. He's
2012.
Last season, and then he retired retired in 2019 with the after playing with the 49ers and the Cardinals.
Exactly. So we're going to talk with him about what it was like to be, to come to an expansion team, his upbringing, how was it playing for the Browns, during those lean years, what he's doing now. It's going to be a fun time talking with him talking with him because he's about my age. Maybe it's just because all these players are about my age and it's making me feel, I don't know.
I'm interested to hear Phil's take on his exit from the team, because I remember at the time that shocked everybody. It shocked fans. Fans were really upset about it.
Yes, they were.
And there's a lot of rumors that he was going to come back. I would love to see and hear if Phil can clear that up and give us some clarity on that situation. Right. Every time you hear Phil Dawson speak, Scott, he always talks and loves the Browns. Right. And loves the city of Cleveland. So we'll hopefully try to get into some of that stuff as well.
Right. Exactly. And we'll see what he's up to now. I think he's involved with some coaching, and we'll see how that's treating him. And we'll just take it from there. I'm sure he's got a lot of insight too on football and just a lot of things going on as he's living down in Texas right now.
And I want to see his thoughts on the current Brown situation with the Deshaun Watson acquisition and the Baker Mayfield stuff. Always love to pick former players' brains about that. So our conversation with Brown's legendary kicker, Phil Dawson, is coming up right after the break.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
What's up, everyone? Chase Smith here, host of the Chase Smith podcast, and my podcast reflects who I am. My hobbies, my interests, my passions, my curiosities, my careers, my questions, and my family. I'll spend time talking about all types of sports, movies, TV shows, trending news stories, and other cultural events, and even faith. This is who I am, and I hope I can get to know you as well. Join me on the Chase Smith podcast, and let's have some thought-provoking conversations, only on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, this is Mike Voorhees.
And I'm Brian Shaw. No, not the pitcher. We're the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast, formerly a Swing and a Tribe.
Don't have time to watch 162 games of baseball? We do. We have you covered with recaps of the games, stats, and analysis throughout the MLB season.
Subscribe now to Guardians of the Land and Press Play Pods for all your Cleveland sports analysis.
It's going to be about a 35-yard field goal attempt for Phil Dawson kicking into the dog pound. Snap is back. They've got it down. Dawson punches the ball end over end. That kick is up, and it is good. He got it. And believe me, that's big on this kind of day.
All right, guys, a 50-yard field goal attempt for Phil Dawson. From 50 yards away, he knocks it to 52-yard attempt by Dawson. He's hit from 50 and 51. Trying to make it 3 points closer. This guy is unbelievable.
Yeah, man.
3 50-plus yard field goals by the 14-year veteran.
There's Phil Dawson from 51 yards out. On its way. That has enough leg. Oh, that looked like a chip shot.
A 48-yard field goal attempt. Dawson ready. Snap is back. They place it down. Dawson's kick is a line drive, and it is off the crossbar and good! He did it again!
A miracle worker, Phil Dawson.
Welcome back to Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, all part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Our guest today holds several Cleveland Browns records, including most field goals in a single game with 6, the most consecutive field goals made, 29. And then, of course, he beat one of the Browns' holy grail of records with the most career field goals. At the time, Lou the Two Groza held that record of 234. Phil Dawson broke that record, which has been extended to more than 300 field goals in his career. Our guest today, the legendary Phil Dawson. Phil, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Doing great. It's great to be with you guys. Anytime I can reconnect with people of Cleveland, I love to do it.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time out and talking with us today. So, Phil, what are you up to these days? What do a lot of fans may not know what you're doing?
I retired in 18, took a year off to watch my oldest son play his senior year of high school. And after about 3 months at home, my wife said, "You need to go get a job." And I decided to throw my hat into the high school coaching ring, moved to Nashville, Tennessee for 2 years, and was able to be a special teams coordinator and assistant head coach. And the goal all along was to become a head coach one day. Little did I know an opportunity would pop up in my hometown of Austin, Texas. And so I am now the head coach at Hyde Park High School in Austin, Texas, and trying to rebuild a program.
So was coaching always something you wanted to do? Did you see that as kind of a natural progression from your playing days to your retired days?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. My first football coach ever in 7th grade turned out to be the best football coach I ever had. And I began the dream then, given his influence and impact on my life. Jim Ledford's his name. I knew that coach, I love football. I didn't know how long I'd play football, obviously. That turned out to be over a quarter century later. I woke up and, I'm like, well, football's what I know. It's where my relationships are. It's where my experience is. I still have a love for the game, and I've always wanted to coach since playing for Coach Ledford. So it seemed like the natural next step. And I'll tell you what, since diving into this world, I've loved every day of it.
You get a little rewarding experience teaching these young kids the game, Phil?
I do. And I chose the high school level. I had opportunities to do college and NFL, and those were obviously very enticing, but something about high school age boys, you can still have an influence on their life. I reference that in my own personal experience. It's much bigger than just the game. Yeah, we're going to coach them hard and be very demanding and see them improve, but you can still make an impact on kids' lives at this age. And that's something that's really appealing to me. My wife's real involved in what we do off the field with the program and the families and the kids and all that. So plus I got a chance the last 2 years coach my own son. I mean, how many dads get to do that? His last game as a senior, we walked off field with state championship trophy in Tennessee. So pretty awesome memory for dad. And now my daughter will be in the high school here with me, so I can keep an eye on all those snotty nosed boys trying to talk to her. So it's just a family deal, and that family's always been a huge deal. So when you mix faith, family, and football all together, it's a pretty good combo.
My daughter's going to be in 9th grade as well, so I know exactly what you're going through. It's my one regret, and I've told my brother this, is I regret not playing football in high school. I don't know if I would have been all that good, but I had a chance to kind of live through my son, and I got to coach him for 5 years through Pee Wee football, and then watching him. He'll be a senior this year. So you're right. I mean, I played baseball, but football is something totally different.
It really is. And it's such a demanding sport. There's so many valuable lessons that you can learn, whether you turn out being able to play college football or not. And I'm kind of tired of the culture telling us that if you're not a college football player, you might as well not even play in high school. What's the point? I feel like there's so much we can learn. You're out there with your buddies you've grown up with. These are the final years you're going to have with them. Final time your parents are going to have a chance to be a part of what you're doing. So why not make that just a really fun experience and learn the game of football, learn life, learn how to work hard, respect authority, work with other people. I mean, all these things that you need when you get into your professional career. So it's a really sweet spot, and man, I'll encourage you to enjoy that senior year, because man, once those playing days are over, they're over.
Well, I think the thing sports gives kids of all ages, no matter the sport. It's overcoming adversity. It's team building. There's just so many positives that go in with sports that they can apply in their school, but then when they get older in their careers too, that just, I think for people that aren't in it, don't get it.
That's right. And, I keep telling my boys here, student athlete, they go together. If the scales are unbalanced, the other one's going to suffer. And so if you're trying to be excellent on the field, obviously, if you don't handle your classwork the way you should, and now you're facing makeup tests and redos and all this, well, where's that time going to come from? You're going to wind up missing out on training or practices or whatever it is. So you're going to suffer as an athlete in the long run. So teaching these guys that whatever area of life it is, you swing for the fences, you give your best effort, you're disciplined, you do all these things, and now you find success in all areas.
Phil, you made 441 career field goals, 305 with the Browns. I mean, yeah. It's an incredible feat. When did you know that you were going to be a kicker? And did you ever think you're going to make that many field goals?
For whatever reason, well, first of all, I never wanted to be a kicker. That's well documented. I say that every time I give an interview. I'm still on that soapbox. But anyways, for whatever reason, I could just kick a ball. Just God gave me the ability to do it. I don't really remember working on it all that much. And when I started playing football in 7th grade, it's like the day before the first game, and we hadn't done a lick of special teams. And so literally the coaches are like, well, who can kick? We got to kick off tomorrow. And all my buddies who had, been on all my different teams through the years said, Phil can kick a soccer ball. Let's see if he can kick a football. And it kind of took off from there. I went to my first camp before my freshman year of high school and had some success there. And the guy that did the camp pulled my parents off to the side and said, you know what, I know he doesn't want to do this, but he's got a future in this. He really needs to start working on it. And so that's when I was still playing other positions all through high school, but I started working on kicking on the side, and things kind of blew up from there.
Of course, you went on to play at Texas and had a memorable kick in that 30-mile-per-hour wind. Was that against Virginia or Virginia Tech?
Virginia.
Yep. Yeah, you watch video of that, and that's crazy, of that win. Of course, we'll get into some of your big kicks here with the Browns, but you went undrafted in 98. You spent time on the practice squads of the Raiders and the Patriots, and then the Browns came calling in 99 for an expansion team. But walk us through, as a player, being picked on an expansion team and working out and trying to make the team. How did that whole process work?
Yeah, it was crazy. I expected to be drafted. Everyone told me I would be. So when the draft came in 98 and the phone never rang, that was not quite the start to the career I was looking for. So I spent an entire season on the Patriots practice squad. Not a lot of fun, but it was a really good learning experience. I'm just a Texas boy and never really been outside of Texas. And all of a sudden I'm in Foxborough, Massachusetts, having to play in the cold weather for the first time, really, and picked up some really valuable things from Adam Vinatieri that year. And now the Browns are coming back in 99, and there was no roster limit in that expansion year. I mean, we had players everywhere. There were 3 other kickers on the roster. That's highly unusual. Usually there's only one other guy you got to beat out. And so I just kind of went to work. Didn't really know what was going to happen. My confidence wasn't at an all-time high, having not been drafted, having spent a year toiling away on practice squad, not really knowing where this was going to lead. Final cut day comes. Chris Palmer walks up to me. I see the other guys walking out the front door. I'm like, well, here's the moment I've been waiting on, since draft day. And Palmer looks at me and goes, we're going to start out with you. And that wasn't quite the ringing endorsement or moment I had been dreaming about. But that one comment, albeit a very painful one, an unexpected one, I think stuck with me all those years. I mean, I literally felt like I was one bad game away from it all being over. And so that's when I chose to just approach the game like a position player. I was going to be the hardest working guy out there. And while I didn't have an opponent across the line of scrimmage per se that I had to study like a lineman would, or a linebacker, quarterback, whatever, I had the weather. That was my opponent on game day. And no two kicks in Cleveland, Ohio are ever the same. And so in year 14, I'm getting a lot of pats on the back. Boy, you got the stadium all figured out, Phil. I'm like, y'all have no idea. It's one kick at a time. Who knows what's going to happen next time? So that's when I dove in and kind of started studying the wind patterns and temperature and how that affected distance and how much rain there was and how that affects footing. I mean, I was pretty psycho with all that, but I think that was all fueled by that comment Palmer gave me back on that expansion team in 1999.
Did he ever give you any additional some positivity once he saw, boy, you can really kick? Was he ever a little more
no,
or
I don't
was
think
it
he ever talked to me again. He had me scared to death. So I was in straight up survival mode. I learned that this is a job. This is a business. You don't do it for pats on the back from the coach. Obviously you would enjoy those from time to time. But I didn't get them. And so my job was to show up each and every day, make the kicks, and hope I had a job when the day was over.
We all know the Browns struggled quite a bit in your 14 years of the Browns, the expansion. And of course, a lot of weight, I'm sure, was on you guys too, considering what happened with the Browns 4 and 5 years prior to that. Only 2 winning seasons. We know did that frustrate you the deeper you went into your career, wondering, hey, are we going to make it past just the normal 16-game schedule?
Yeah, football's not a lot of fun when you're not winning. And obviously you don't sign up for a job to, quote, have fun, but we'd all like to have aspects of our jobs that we find enjoyable. And front office could never figure out what their identity was. I mean, we were constantly changing front office structure. We'd have a president one year, we'd have a GM the next year. Obviously we'd have different coaches all the time, different personnel. It's just, you never felt like you were getting your footing. And I think that was the most frustrating part. I mean, you win games, lose games, that happens, but we didn't even know who we were. And every year was different than the year before. You didn't ever feel like you could build on anything. And so that was extremely frustrating. And then as I grew in my love for the people of Cleveland and my connection with the folks in Cleveland got stronger and stronger, I started feeling their pain. At first it was just me trying to survive and have a job. I didn't care about anybody else, I'll be honest. But then as things started to settle down for me in my career and starting to get established, these relationships around town, I started learning the history and feeling those people's pain. And that only made the frustration worse. And so it was incredibly difficult to leave when I did. It wasn't up to me. It wasn't my choice. I wanted to remain in Cleveland. And I felt like, I still had some good years ahead of me. And the fact that I wasn't going to have a chance to see this thing out and at least raise the hopes of my friends now in Cleveland, that was really painful to go through.
Phil, obviously it disappointed you that the Browns didn't re-sign you for that 2013 season. Did it surprise you that they didn't? And then second follow-up with that was, were you ever close? And was there ever an opportunity to come back years later before you ultimately retired?
So I was shocked after that 12 season. I made the Pro Bowl that year. I'm thinking that's a pretty good year to make the Pro Bowl, in a contract year. I've done my part. You grow up and you're told just handle your business on the field. Everything else will take care of itself. And even though I was getting older, I felt like the position I played kind of insulated me from that fact. So I felt like all systems go. It was our home now. It's the only place I knew, the only place I wanted to be. My kids called it home. We were very comfortable there. Everything was lined up, and then no offer was made. I was begging, just let me play for league minimum, and wasn't ever even offered a contract. So no, we never even got close. There was nothing to even counter. There was nothing to talk through. It was basically just beat it. And I had to quickly pivot because in the NFL world, free agency, everything starts happening fast. And while I'm in shock and trying to figure out what just happened, now I'm a San Francisco 49er and had to just go. And so that was a really tough year there. But just like 1999, I had to go to work and I had to go, prove myself to a new group of teammates, a new fan base, a new organization. And it's not easy starting over in this league at 38 years old.
So walk us through, because this is one question I've always wondered. So you're a free agent, you sign with a team 2,000 miles away. You have your family already in Cleveland, basically in the East Coast, for lack of a better, just you're on the East Coast compared to San Francisco. So do you yourself move out there, and does your family stay in Cleveland, and then you slowly migrate your family to San Francisco? How does that work? What's the time scale for a professional athlete when that happens?
That's the other thing. I mean, when you're young, maybe you're married, whatever, it's a little easier to make these changes. But when you got 3 kids in school and, they're all plugged in, all of a sudden you're 2,000 miles away, things get real complicated. So we had to make the difficult decision then, and it felt rushed, right? Because of the timing of how everything was happening. What are we going to do? And we knew Austin, Texas was our home. The plan all along was, when football was over, it was either going to be Cleveland or it was going to be Austin. And I bet you if we had played the rest of our career in Cleveland, we'd still be there. But I knew I had several more years in me playing football. And so as a result, it just didn't make a lot of sense for us to stay in Cleveland at that point. But I only signed a 1-year deal with the Niners, so I wasn't going to move my family 2,000 miles and only be out there for 6 months for a season. So that didn't make sense either. So we just decided at that point, Austin would become home base. And now the last 8 years of my career, I would leave my family in Austin for the season. So I went 8 years as a result of this one decision by Joe Banner. I went 8 years of my life only seeing my family half the year. So this had some pretty deep results to it. In addition to just being sad I couldn't finish my time in Cleveland.
Phil, was it Joe Banner who was the GM, or was it Tom Heckert?
It was Banner. He came in, and the only explanation I got was if you were over 30, he didn't have you in his plans.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I know as an athlete, I mean, it's now, 10 years ago. Are you over that? Like, have you ever talked to Joe again later on? I mean, he's done
I've actually never spoken to Joe Banner.
No kidding.
Not one word. So I'm not over it. I'm not angry about it anymore. There were a lot of years, I'll admit, I was still angry, especially when I had to read, Phil was chasing a ring or greener pastures. I'm like, guys, I invested 14 years here. I want to see it through. I'm not quitting on Cleveland at all. I felt like the organization was, kind of quitting on me. And then it was even more frustrating when Banner was gone after a year. I'm like, 14 years of my life, and then one human that was only there for 11 months, dramatically changed the course of my career and family's life. But that's how this thing goes. That's why it's a job. I'm certainly not the only one that's ever had a tough experience at work. And so you just got to rebound and make the best of it. And I feel like I did. And I proved I could still play by playing 8 more years.
Phil, there were rumors going around probably 2014 through your time when you retired that you were going to come back, that the Browns had mutual interest, and there was a lot of regime changes over those years. Were those rumors true? Was there ever a moment you could have came back, or did they ever reach out to you?
Never reached out to me, but there was 100% interest on my part. And I have to admit, I'd get a little excited when I'd read one of these reports, but my agent nor I were ever contacted by the Browns about coming back.
Wow. That's disappointing. I know our listeners are wish that you could have finished your career and played in Cleveland your entire 20+ year career and not 14 years. That's incredible and sad.
Well, that's why it was so special when I got to come back and retire. That meant a great deal to me. I think it meant just as much to the fans. We were able to reconnect, and I was able to at least wrap it up in a bow, unlike 2013 when I basically just had to disappear and didn't have the luxury of time to say goodbye, and how much I loved the place and how much I appreciated the people there.
You retired in 2019. You've been busy with your family. You kind of just talked a little bit about, moving around a little bit and coaching. So you've had some time, maybe a little bit, at least, to reflect on your career and your time in Cleveland, right?
I find myself in grandpa mode a little bit here and there. So that I'm not a grandpa yet, but I'm the gray hair. I'm heading that way.
Phil, one of our favorite memories was back in, I think it was December 16, 2007. I have the date written right here. Blizzard conditions against the Bills. You made 2 field goals. The Browns won 8-0. Weird score. You don't hear that much with a football game. Take us back to that game. Was that honestly the worst conditions you've ever played in?
most
pretty
extreme.
close.
There were some games that were definitely colder,
Mm-hmm.
but wind, snow. I mean, you didn't even know what yard line you were on. Couldn't see the sidelines, and it's the only game in my career where I went out for pregame warmups, and I usually had about a 35-minute session I would go through to get prepared for that game, and I stayed out there for 5 minutes. And I went back inside, and everyone's freaking out because they knew I was a stickler for my routine and how I prepared and all that. And here I am sitting in my locker, and they're thinking something's wrong. I said, guys, if I stay out there for 35 minutes, I'm going to have zero confidence going into this game because all I'm going to do is miss kicks for 35 minutes. I don't even know what you do today. And evidenced by the fact that we couldn't even score a touchdown that day. They didn't score a touchdown. You couldn't throw the ball. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't even run the ball that effectively because you couldn't cut, change direction. I mean, it was just one of those days. And so, we go out in the game, wind up making 2 field goals. And I actually think it's a product of shutting down the pregame warmups, not just completely destroying any kind of momentum or confidence I had, and going out there and just trusting that somehow, some way I was going to, all those good kicks in my muscle memory from all the preparation all season long, all my life long, I'd figure out a way in that moment how to kick one ball through 2 yellow posts, and it wound up working.
Would you say that game, or maybe a different game, what was your one particular highlight of your career, a game or a kick? Do you have one?
Man, it's hard. There were some definite high points. I was asked this a lot. Y'all remember the Run William Run play? We're playing the Falcons. That was a game late in the year. We needed to win to stay in the playoff hunt. It felt like things were starting to fall together. And yet the Cleveland, the other shoe's going to drop kind of thing started falling in everybody's mind. Well, we busted through that. And we won that big game late in the year. And I heard the stadium truly come alive for one of the first times. And man, I don't know why, but that memory of that run William Green had when he went down our right sideline and the roar from that crowd, it's burned into my mind as one of my favorite moments.
I think every Browns fan over the course of their fandom can remember where they were at that game or that Bills game Scott was just talking about. I remember I watched that game from my college house in Kent. I went to Kent State with my dad. He came down and we watched the game together. And then I'm going to ask Scott this question. Scott, do you remember where we were during that game that Phil just talked about, that Falcons game when they clinched to go to the playoffs?
Oh, man. Refresh my memory. I'm trying to remember.
We were at Grandma's house watching that.
Oh, yes, that's right. We were at Grandma's house. Yes, I do remember that.
So, Phil, when we think of these moments, it's just like you bring back memories, and it's nostalgic, but it's very cool to kind of relive those. And you're right, though. That was probably one of the, even to this day, probably one of the best games and loudest games that stadium has ever seen.
Yeah, it was a blast. And up to that point, being a Brown was just about, you were basically an independent contractor, just going out there and trying to do your job, keep your job. That was kind of the first taste of what it's like when you got a team and how the city comes alive to support a team. And man, I love that. It was just incredible.
So I grew up watching Matt Stover kick field goals. That was maybe a little before my brother's time. Yeah, he played for the Browns. But he also went to your high school too. Did you get a chance to meet him? Have you guys ever connected? When did that happen?
Yeah, actually, I should say I went to his high school.
Oh, Rob, there.
Although I did break all his records, but that's another story.
Well, yeah.
He grew up across the street from my best friend, and so I always, I can't remember how much older he is than me, 4, 5, 6 years older than me. I was always intimidated to cross the street because I knew about this guy. He was the stud guy going to college to play football. And so I never really talked to him much in my upbringing. But then when I was at the University of Texas, he lived in Georgetown, which is about 30 minutes away. In his NFL off seasons, we started to get together in those years. And then obviously he was with the Ravens. I'm with the Browns. We played against each other twice a year for, it seemed like forever. And those were always fun games for me. It's pretty crazy to think that one high school had 2 kickers at the same time in the NFL. And what a great guy to look up to. And he was a resource I used, especially in those early years when I was trying to figure out how in the heck do I do my job here.
So we'll take you back to another game, 2007. Of course, the game where, the Phil Dawson rule game, we'll call it that. You watch that video and you're looking at that and you're going, the laws of physics just don't apply to this. How is this even happening? Take us back to that game, that kick. The kick happened, everything went on. And then after they made the ruling, what happened from that point on?
Yeah, usually the referees are the first people off the field. You've all seen it. Game's over. The referees sprint to the locker room, and I saw them hanging out. And I thought I knew the ball did something weird, but, I'm standing at midfield. I can't tell exactly what happened, but I saw Browns personnel who had been under that upright going bananas. So when I see that, I see the referees hanging out. I knew something weird was happening or potentially going to happen, and obviously very hopeful that it would, because I had missed a game tire at Pittsburgh the week before, and that was one of the longest weeks of my life. And so this was my chance to redeem myself, and I'm thinking, once again, we're going to start out with you. You lose against Steelers, you lose against the Ravens in back-to-back weeks, I'm a goner. And so these things are all going through my head. And about that time, the referee came on and said, we're going to take a look at this, which was illegal back then. Thank God they didn't know the rules. They went and they looked at it, but they then said after discussion.
After discussion on the field goal hit the top of the crossbar, went over and hit the extension on the backside, which in fact is a good field goal. It bounced back. The field goal was good.
Probably someone from the league office told, make sure you announce that it was only a discussion. But they indicated that it was a good field goal. We were going to overtime, and the perfect recipe happened in overtime. They kicked off. Josh got a huge return. We got about 2 first downs, and we went out for a field goal and won the game. And man, I went from the scapegoat to the hero in about 5 minutes.
Didn't the other team, they had to come out from the locker room, weren't they already?
Yeah,
they thought the game
were
was
gone.
over, right?
They were gone. We won. We're out of here. Y'all can figure out the rest. We're out of here. And during the discussion, they then went in and got Baltimore to come back out. And that may be why we had such success in overtime. I mean, it was like a knife through hot butter. I mean, they kicked us, huge return. We moved the ball easily and then kicked field goal. So I could see where once you go to the locker room and kind of decompress a little bit, it'd be hard to rev the engine right back up and go play.
I know it's not the same, but I kind of feel like that's what happened to the Cleveland Indians in the World Series in 2016 when that rain delay happened. You come back out there and they were deflated. Right. That rain delay didn't happen, they would have won.
You're out of your routine. You're just kind of hanging out, and all of a sudden it's time to play ball. That's tough.
Phil, I've always wondered this, and I got to ask, because why can't kickers in the NFL be punters? Why can't they just do both jobs?
Yeah, it's difficult. First of all, the amount of time required to practice both I don't know how you do it. And then just mechanically, they're 2 different techniques. Punters, the best skill set a punter can have is the ability to catch the ball. People think it's all about leg swing. It's catching a snap, all the ball handling you have to do to drop the ball correctly. Kickers we could have terrible hands. So that's one thing. Generally, punters are longer lever guys. They're the tall, I call them the 3 or 4 irons in your golf bag. Kickers are generally your 8 or 9 irons. We're 5'11", 6 foot, whereas punters are 6'3", 6'4". I mean, there's obviously exceptions, but just generally speaking. So even the biomechanics are a little different. I think it's hard to be great at both. You can be good at both. You'll see colleges that have, a guy that does both, but it's tough just biomechanically, skill set wise, time wise. And then the last thing, in the NFL, you have to be so dang good at what you do. I'm not saying it can't be done, but there's a reason it hasn't been done up to this point. at the NFL level, because now field goals, you're expected to make 87% of your kicks. Punters are averaging 46 yards a punt, pinning the thing between the numbers and the sideline. I mean, it's tremendous, just the amount of talent that's out there right now.
You punted a few times in the NFL.
Yeah, that was always a Mayday situation, but on a game day when you can only dress 45, the kicker's got to back up the punter and the punter's got to back up the kicker, and it's amazing how few guys can even be serviceable at the other.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So you mentioned you really studied, and all the, the weather, the conditions, and you really put a lot of thought in this, what we would call analytics nowadays. So where would you rank First Energy Stadium in terms of the toughest stadiums to kick in your career?
It's second. Most difficult, Chicago.
Wow.
Weird shaped stadium. The field is atrocious. I mean, just horrible. So at least Cleveland, for Chris Powell does, and his team do an amazing job on the field. And for a kicker, it's all about your plant foot. Imagine in your downswing on hitting a golf ball and your foot slides. What happens? You shank the ball. I mean, it happens to the PGA guys. Well, imagine trying to kick a ball and rise your kicking legs coming through its swing, your plant foot slides. Chicago, it didn't matter what shoe I wore. It didn't matter what technique I used. I could never get a solid plant foot. So as a result, I had no idea where the ball was going. Now you factor in long, crappy grass. The wind patterns in there were all over the place. No rhyme or reason to them. But Cleveland, I would say the weather we face is more inconsistent. I mean, it's all over the map. We generally get one good home game a year, and then winter was there all of a sudden. Just watch it this year. Everyone will get sunburn at the home opener.
Right.
We've all seen it.
Yep.
Get pasty white, and all of a sudden they're crimson red, and they probably have too many beers, and they're walking home sunburn, and then they're wearing zip up hoodies the next home game. It happened every year. So just the weather was all over the map. The Great Lakes region is home of the hardest places to kick: Green Bay, Chicago, Cleveland, Buffalo. There's believe it or not, some southern cities that have a lot of wind, and you get into some rain, which leads to some footing issues, but at least you don't have the cold. So the Great Lakes is the graveyard for kickers for sure.
I've always heard this from NFL players, and before working here in Cleveland, Phil, I worked in Tampa for about 8.5 years covering the Buccaneers. And kickers there, they said that stadium, Raymond James Stadium, was a tough stadium to kick in.
Yeah, the end zones are real low.
Mm-hmm.
So the wind gets in there real easily and whips around. And plus, they share a stadium with a college team. What is it?
USF, yep.
USF. So imagine having a college football game there on Saturday, tearing up the field, then a rain shower overnight. And now you got an NFL game less than 24 hours since college game, now with wind on top of it. Yeah, that can be a really problematic place.
I always wondered this too. I've always heard from NFL guys that Soldier Fields, the field itself, is awful. Why is it? And is it true that they leave the grass a little longer? And is that true? Does that make it harder to kick and make that field awful?
I don't think they try to, but here's a couple things people don't realize. The Bears don't own it. The city of Chicago owns it. Mm-hmm. So I've been out there 3 hours before kickoff, like I always do. I'm doing my walkthrough. I'm the only human doing that. And you'll get some dude doing community service for working off some ticket he got mowing the grass. And this mower is like 40 years old. And I'll stand there and there's grass this tall and the mower will go right over it. And all it does is push the grass over and the grass pops up again because the blade's so dull. So yes, the grass is long. No one takes care of the field. And the ground under the blades of grass is like concrete. So your cleats don't even dig in. So you're basically playing on a sidewalk with long grass going every which way and big bald spots, uneven. The painted lines are crooked. I mean, it's just terrible.
That's hilarious. I had no idea about that. Wow. All right, Phil, we got a few more questions and we'll go in our rapid fire, but I got to ask you this too. Are you surprised that even after you left the Browns 10 years ago, that you were still one of the most beloved players since they came back in the league? You and Joe Thomas are right there. Like, does that still surprise you?
It's very humbling. I was fortunate that I got to be in one place so long that I could establish the connection and relationships that I did. A lot of guys in the league don't ever have that opportunity. I knew it was a special bond before I left. The fact that it's remained and hasn't just, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, it means the world to me. I was, especially the way things ended, I was concerned, how's this going to feel 10 years, 15 years from now? So the outpouring of love that continues to this day, it's one of the great blessings of my life.
You still follow the Browns in the NFL now?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I watch Browns every Sunday, and I'm now learning what it's like to be a Browns fan.
Phil, it can be miserable.
Yeah, it can be tough. It can be tough. That's for sure.
Yeah, the Browns had a disappointing season last year. There were so high hopes, and then there were a lot of things that were derailed. We won't go into all those. But Deshaun Watson's here. The trade went down. I know it's early, but how successful do you think the Browns will be, assuming we get rid of all that side, the tangential stuff, and we focus in on his ability? If everything works out, what do you think the limit is for the Browns with him?
We'll see. I think it really depends on what you just mentioned, how much of a distraction this proves to be. There's no doubt he's an incredible football player. He's already established that in his time in Houston. Talk to anyone who's played against him. They'll all pretty much say that. But it's a team game. And if you're bringing a bunch of distraction into the locker room, that's something your team has to deal with. One thing New England's been fantastic at all these years is they eliminate distractions. And the league might need to take note of that. Pretty good example. It's hard enough to get 53 guys on the same page, all buying into the same message. And now with distraction, distractions always come. It's just which team handles them the best. And so time will tell how the Browns handle this. What distraction does it wind up being? I don't know. I can't really speak to any of that. All I know is I hope the team can come together, play as one, and we'll see how good they are when it's all said and done.
You're a Texas boy. Baker Mayfield's a Texas boy. Do you have a relationship with him?
I've only met him a couple times. I'm so ancient now. He's probably not all too eager to go hang out with the old guy, but I have a lot of respect for Baker. My oldest son was a quarterback, and I got a little insight into the quarterback world. And for him to walk on at two different universities and beat out the scholarship guys, you got to remember there's coaches on those staffs whose job it is to go find scholarship guys. So when those guys get beat out, it's not good for the coach. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he did that not once but twice, I think speaks to his tenaciousness. And I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he can land in a good spot and kind of have a second chance at his career. And I appreciate what he did for the Browns. I hope people recognize, albeit with some tough outcomes that stuff that happened that we wished hadn't, the organization is in a better place now than the day he got there. And you can't deny that the most important guy on the football field, the quarterback, had a role in that.
All right, we're going to get into our rapid fire questions. These are just softball questions. They're real easy. They could be one-word answers. So we'll start with this question, Phil. What was your favorite restaurant in Cleveland?
Oh man, probably Hyde Park Steakhouse at Crocker Park.
You mentioned briefly your walkthroughs before games, but did you have any superstitions that you were really serious about, or any interesting fun pregame meals or anything?
I'm sure some guys would say it's superstition, but me, I was just a huge routine guy. So I ate a steak every Saturday night of every game. So my cardiologist is probably not real happy with my nutritional choices, but every game day morning was blueberries, raspberries, and a couple scrambled eggs. But I had a reason for that. I knew my stomach handled those things well, and the last thing you want is to be dealing with that. You can take a leak on the sideline, but if the other's happening, you're in trouble. So right. I found what worked for me. And so I was a huge routine guy, and I got to stadium at the same time. I stretched at the same time. I took the field at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You watched me on the sideline. I had a routine there. I mean, I think that's how I handled the nerves, because if I had something to do, I wasn't thinking about the ramifications of the moment.
Phil, I got to ask you, you're a Texas guy, so you love meat. You love steak. What's your favorite cut of steak?
It's got to be a bone-in filet.
Mm.
Bone-in filet all day long.
I'm a big tomahawk ribeye guy.
There you go. Well, you're young and you can get away with that.
Right.
Come talk to me when you're my age. You'll be sluggish for 4 days if you do
that. Phil, your favorite Cleveland athlete you met in town that wasn't a member of the Browns? So we're talking Cavs, Indians, soccer. Or it could be a couple, somebody you met that was like, well, you remember to this day.
Man, that's hard. That's really hard.
Did you meet LeBron back in those days?
I never met LeBron. I went to several games. Honestly, guys, I didn't get out much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of a homebody. I didn't live the big life like people think the life's all about, and some guys live it that way. I was pretty much go to work, go home, hang out with the fam, get ready for the next day. So I don't have an answer to that, because I don't know that I met many guys outside of the Browns.
Okay.
Favorite hobbies outside of coaching and family life right now?
Ranch life. Got a ranch in South Texas. I've always loved the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a kind of a green thumb kind of guy. I like working in the yard, all that. Well, now I have a huge yard to take care of. And so when I get some time off, I head south and fill protein feeders, get on the tractor and, shred grass and just watch sun come up and go down and admire all your hard work at the end of the day.
In the 14 years you were with the Browns, was there a Browns head coach, or maybe it wasn't a head coach, it was not an assistant coach that really that was your biggest influence?
Jerry Rossberg, greatest football mind I've ever been around. I was fortunate to have 6 years with Jerry. He taught me so much and included me in the strategy of the game. We were able to collaborate together and come up with some stuff, especially in the kickoff game, that people hadn't done before. And I take a great deal of satisfaction in knowing that things I see happening now in the NFL were a result of things that Jerry and I did together. And as someone who wanted to coach someday, his contributions to growing my mind in the game of football really helped develop me for what I'm doing now.
Phil, do you have a favorite TV show you and your wife and kids are streaming right now?
Yeah, we're big bingers. We'll find something and we'll crank it out. I think my wife and I watch Suits in like a week, all 10 seasons. I mean, we're pretty psycho like that. But now that the boys are kind of gone and now it's a female house, I have to admit it's American Idol. We're on the couch, we're watching American Idol, and I'm suffering through that every time.
Favorite team you enjoyed playing against?
Cowboys. I grew up in Dallas. Huge Cowboys fan growing up. And it was really strange when I became a 49er. And then we played the Cowboys because, Dwight Clark broke my heart in 1981 when he caught the catch in the NFC Championship game and cost my Cowboys a chance at the Super Bowl. So playing against the Cowboys always kind of got me revved up a little bit.
All right, last question, Phil. You've kicked 441 field goals in your career, 305 with the Browns, a record for the Cleveland franchise. Be honest with us. Can you still kick? And if so, how far?
I have not kicked a ball in 16 months. I think if you gave me 2 weeks to stretch and all that, I think I could still kick, yes. I think I could probably still make it from 50 plus. And I'm 100% positive I wouldn't be able to walk for 3 weeks after that.
So what you're saying is during football season, if some of your players are, hey coach, can you come on, get out there and kick?
Here's a funny story. Last season we were playing Pulaski Academy. They're the famous school out of Arkansas that never punts, and all they do is onside kick. So we're preparing for this crazy opponent, and none of my kickers can hit all these different onside kicks that Pulaski can. So who's the scout team kicker that whole week? It's me. And all I do is onside kicks. Really not that big of a deal. You're not swinging your leg hard, but I do onside kicks for 3 days straight. And we play the game on a Friday night. And Monday morning, I'm in the doctor's office getting cortisone injections in my back and steroid packs for my hip. I mean, I was done. So however many kicks the good Lord gave me, I'm pretty sure I used them all up.
Wow, that's unbeliable.
We hate to laugh, but that is kind of interesting.
Yeah, we're laughing because I'm about your age, Phil, and I can. Yeah, I tried to sprint, run with one of my son's buddies. And that was a mistake. I can still run, except I kind of pulled a hammy, and that same kind of thing. It's like,
I need y'all to do me a favor. When y'all see Joe Thomas, I need y'all to tell him I'm really mad at him, because we're all supposed to get saggy and soft and fat in retirement. And Joe looks better now than he did as a player. So he's making, my wife's seeing that as well, by the way. She sees Joe on TV looking all in shape and awesome and all this. And then she's looking across the couch while I got my hand down a bag of Cheetos, and she's looking at that slob over there like, what happened to you? So please pass that along to Joe, that he and I got some beef together.
I've been trying to get Joe on the podcast for a while, and we've been in communication with his people. And once we do nail it down, we are going to tell him that his transformation is absolutely incredible.
It's amazing. And tell Joe not to have people. Like, when you set this up with me, you just emailed me. It's
right.
Good. Yeah. Joe doesn't need people. Come on, Joe.
I'm going to tell him that.
You're just a Wisconsin O lineman, dude. You don't need people.
Right.
Wisconsin O lineman that just loves to go fish and hunt.
Yeah.
Your people is you.
That's right.
Phil, on behalf of my brother John and all the Cleveland fans, thank you so much for joining us here for the last 45 minutes. It was great. We got a lot of good insight on your career and what you're doing now. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you on the podcast. It really is.
And great time. Appreciate the opportunity. Please tell Cleveland hello for me, and I still love them.
We'll do that for you, Phil. Thank you so much.
All right. See you guys.
Take care.
John, that was really, really insightful when he was talking about the Browns, how they didn't offer him anything. He was talking about, if you're 30 and over, you're done. And the Browns never once communicated with him directly. He's never even had a conversation with the former GM. What was it? Joe Banner. Yeah, nothing.
And I remember that too, because when he left, everyone was shocked. He came off a Pro Bowl year, one of the best kickers in the NFL. And here's Joe Banner coming in as the GM and deciding to put his own agenda on things. Hey, this happens in the NFL. But when you say starting to kick guys off the team when they're 30 years old, I get it. But you can't kick one of the best kickers off the team, that's contributing and probably one of the better players on your team who's responsible for the majority of your points. Right. Obviously a horrible move. Would love to hear Joe Banner's side of that story, or maybe not his side, but his reasons for it. Right. I would like to know the analytics to that.
And and this is another example too of, Phil's hearing stories about people writing, oh, Phil's chasing a ring. Well, they don't have the complete story. Mm-hmm. And so they're jumping to conclusions, talking about him being the selfish athlete who wants to leave for greener pastures. And with him, that was not the story whatsoever.
Yeah, it couldn't be more further from the truth. And
right,
the direct
exactly.
opposite of that. He adapted to Cleveland, being a guy from Texas.
Right.
And really, fell in love with the city. And when he talked about that, Scott, who he reminded me of? I heard a lot of Eric Metcalf in his voice.
Yes.
Because Eric Metcalf, another guy from Texas who's not familiar with the, cold and snow, but eventually he warmed up to it, fell in love with the team, loved the franchise, loved the city. Same thing with Phil Dawson.
And he had his family here too. I mean, he has, 3 little kids at the time. They were entrenched in the community. The kids were in schools, and, that's a part of the business, like you said, but unfortunately it ended on those type of circumstances, but it worked out for him. I'm glad to see he's coaching. That's a funny story, but not a funny story of him kicking onside kicks.
That was hilarious.
And then having to get a cortisone shot. I know he's about my age, and I'm thinking, with my son, we go out and we screw around and we're doing this, and this. And then the next day I'm walking around going, did I hit my knee like on a door or the deck? Oh no, that's because I'm,
Yeah, Phil Dawson's 47.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I'm a year older than him.
You're older than him, but it's funny, Scott, that he did that for 3 days, and then that was during practice week. Then he had the game, and then on Monday, I mean, it was delayed.
Yeah, it's like a leg workout. It's always delayed. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right. Yeah,
that's
no,
cool.
Phil's a great guy. We really hope you guys really enjoyed our conversation with him. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for continued listenership. If you want to get in touch with myself or with Scott, you can do that on Twitter. You can follow me at John_Sabol. You can follow the pod at Sabol Brothers.
And me on Twitter at Scott Sabol FOX8. And Joe Thomas, if you're listening to this, he called you out. So we got to have you on the podcast because you're making Phil look like a slob. That's his wife saying that, not us.
Not us. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And Phil, we're gonna get Joe on at some point.
Right.
And we're gonna have to hear his side of the story as to why he went through a massive transformation. That's hopefully a conversation for a different day. Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. If you're listening on Spotify or on the Press Play website or on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts, we appreciate your listenership. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll check you guys out next time.